welcome to the best book show ever. I'm Beth Albright, your host, and I'm so excited today. We're just having so much fun. I was in talk radio for umpteen years, and I totally miss this side of being artistic because I think entertaining people and creating and using my voice was something I really, really missed. And now, how exciting, I get to interview authors. So I am thrilled by that because I'm an author myself. And my guest today is Anita Hughes. She also writes under Anita Abriel. So Anita, thank you so much for joining us.
Beth, thank you for having me. This is an absolute treat.
Yeah, me too. And we live so close.
We do. Yeah,
we literally met just a few weeks before the pandemic. I think you were like the last live person
yeah.
You were the last person I saw.
Pretty
and it's
much.
like all of a sudden lockdown. So, but that was fun. And we will definitely do that again.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yes. Well, tell me all about Anita Hughes and you writing your Christmas books. You have Christmas books coming out. You are so prolific. You have something or several things coming out all the time. And your new book is coming out right now, like soon.
On Tuesday, yes. So I started writing historical fiction last year, and the book The Light After the War, which I think you have a copy of.
Yes. I will hold it up.
Was based
it's beautiful covers.
Thank you. And that's from Simon & Schuster, and it was based on my mother's experiences during and after the Holocaust. My mother was a Holocaust survivor from Hungary, and it's a wonderful, wonderful story in that it goes from Hungary to Austria to Naples to Ellis Island to Venezuela, and then eventually Australia, where she settled and where I was born. So,
it's very epic in that regard. In reading the book, to me, it was just such an epic story of that slice of her life.
Thank you. And you know, I heard many of these stories when I was a child, and she died from Alzheimer's a number of years ago. And as I, wrote all my Anita Hughes books, which are sort of a lot more lighter romance, all set in these gorgeous locations, I really wanted to write something deeper, and I really wanted to honor her.
Yeah.
If you see every single one of my books, and I've published with St. Martin's 15, women's fiction, and now these historical fiction. Every single one is dedicated to my mother.
Oh,
every single book.
What year did she die?
About 10 years ago.
Okay. My mother died of dementia 3 years ago. And so I know what you mean. I can't not dedicate a book to her because my stories come from her.
Exactly. And I really wanted to do something that honored her. But it took me about 7 years to sort of go, okay, I can write in a different genre and I can tell this story, which was, a lot more complex. Mm-hmm. And so I did, and I really, really enjoyed it, and got a really wonderful response from readers.
Right.
And so on Tuesday, my next historical fiction, Lana's War, comes
Love
out,
it.
and that is set on the French Riviera during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a young woman who sees her husband being murdered by the Gestapo because he was hiding a child in the piano in Paris. And so she goes to the French Riviera where she joins the resistance. And I learned a lot about the French Riviera that nobody really has covered too much, the French Riviera. And there was the Gestapo, the head of the Gestapo there, whose name was Alice Brunner. His job was to rid the entire Riviera of Jews. And he did that in a matter of months.
Oh my gosh.
1943 to 1944.
No, in the Riviera during the war, you never hear about that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What inspired that for you?
Well, it was a safe place for until 1943 for the Jews. My mother actually used to tell me stories. She loved the French Riviera, and especially the Hotel Carlton in Cannes, and she used to talk about it all the time. So I started doing some research, and then I discovered that this Alice Brunner that he actually survived the war, was not in the Nuremberg trials because there was another Captain Brunner who they thought was him. And so, and he actually died in Syria when he was in his 80s after many, many threats
Hmm.
on his life. So he lived a long time.
Wow. Wow. How was that for you jumping genres? Because that's something I'm trying to do right now. And it's, to me, I mean, the writing process is the writer's process. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's tough. I mean, for me, it's been going from women's fiction, funny comedy stuff to suspense. It's a completely different voice. I have to use my dramatic acting voice and not my, comedy voice, which comes much more naturally to me. How is it for you?
Well, it is very interesting. I just finished writing my third historical fiction, which will come out next January or so. And I do love it because I love doing the research. And I like that time period a lot. I might have more trouble with all the, all the current lingo, shall we say, the Instagram and the Snapchat and the this and that.
Mhm.
So I like the sort of digging deeper into these incredible tragedies and, incredible heartache and incredible courage. So I like all that. And then, yeah, at the same time, I finished writing that one, about a month ago, and not even. And then I went right back to, I'm writing now Christmas on the Ranch, which will come out. I have a Christmas book coming out this year, and this one will come out next year. So,
So do you do 2 books a year? Is that what you? Yeah.
Yeah, one historical fiction and one Christmas book.
That's fantastic. I will use you as my model because I've got number of letters from people recently that know I'm writing a suspense. No, we want more Sassy Bells. And I have one woman in New York who wrote, and she said, I've read them all so many times. They're dog-eared and falling apart, which I love her. I want to send her a big kiss. But for the writer, I mean, didn't you enjoy seeing what else you could do?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't give it up. I have a lot more historical fiction that I want to explore. And I get very close to the characters and exploring the real history.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely put a lot of real events into it.
So for the writer who they always say, write what you know. I was just speaking with someone about this. The historical fiction, you're not really able to know that because it's a completely different era. The women that you kind of have to embody and the voice that you're using, they're not familiar. They don't live in our time. They don't think the same types of ways. Relationships with other people back in those times was so different. How do you do that? How do you write a historical fiction when the writer is supposed to write what they know?
Well, I think that if you're going to have a long career as a writer, you're going to run out of things that you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
so true.
I think I honestly have lost track. It's probably my 18th book published.
Wow. Congratulations.
Sure. Thank you. So I don't know that much.
Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you embody those women, those strong women from another era?
I do watch a lot of classic movies, and I have honestly seen every Katharine Hepburn, every Audrey Hepburn, every Grace Kelly, all, that's the beauty of Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
You can see, and I've seen every, I've had readers say, and I agree that Lana and the guy she falls in love with, Guy, remind them of Grace Kelly and Cary Grant in How to Catch a Thief,
Mm-hmm.
set on the French Riviera.
Oh, wow.
In Cannes, at the Hotel Carlton.
Uh-huh.
So I take from what I watch.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to read. I never read the genre that I'm writing.
Oh, that's interesting. Why not?
I don't want to hear anybody else's voice.
Okay.
In my head.
Yeah, because I've done that and it has been confusing.
Yeah,
because
I'm very, very strict on that.
That's a good idea. But if you like that genre, don't you want to read that?
I read it when I'm writing the other genre.
That's perfect. Perfect. And so when when you're writing, your historicals, you can read your Christmas romances.
Exactly. I was reading Sophie Kinsella, and then I had to put that aside when I went back to my Christmas book.
No, that's probably would have helped me to talk to you about this, because I was reading Lisa Jewell and Ruth Ware, and I'm writing my own suspense, and I was
Yeah,
crazy hearing their style of writing. Celeste Ng, I had to stop.
yeah.
I had to stop myself. And then I went to the historicals, which was a little easier for me to enjoy those novels, because I'm either doing one of the two, reading or writing all the time. How do you manage to get two novels? What's your writing process about getting two novels out a year? Because that's most writers aren't able to do that. They're not that prolific.
Well, first of all, I'm very fortunate that I have two wonderful publishers. So Simon & Schuster is doing the historicals, and then St. Martin's is doing the Christmas books. So that's one. That's great. And I have a tremendous agent, and so that all really helps. And then I do have a very strict. I'm a very strict with myself. I have an entire process. Which I mentioned, I think, even at a book event that we did together, that at night, I sit in the dark for about an hour and a half, and I think up what I'm going to write the next day.
Do you take notes? Do you write things down?
No, I truly, I think up the dialogue, I think up everything. And I almost don't even think about what I'm going to write the next day until that time. And because you know what it's like, the hardest part, I think, is knowing what's going to come next. And you don't ever want to leave it not knowing what's going to come next, because
that's true.
Hard the next morning.
That's very hard. Right.
And then I try to write in the morning, because if I don't, it disappears.
Yeah.
Which generally works, sometimes doesn't. And then I never let myself do anything besides write, and I walk every day and go to the grocery store until 6 p.m. And then at 6 p.m. I'm done for the day, and I can have my cup of coffee and read. Mm-hmm. And then I'll generally go back a little bit and possibly do some revisions and then do it again tomorrow.
Is there a set number of words you like to try to get to every day?
I try to do 1,000.
1,000, okay.
And I often do 1,500. And then at the end of every chapter, I go back and completely revise.
And so then, about how long is one book taking you to get done? What's your word count you're trying to hit?
The historical fiction around 80, a little bit over 80, and the Christmas books sort of mid 70s. They like them shorter because they're lighter.
Yeah.
So it depends. At the beginning of the pandemic, one book took me a while because children were home.
Yeah.
And now my son's gone to college, so the last book actually I wrote very quickly. Surprisingly quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing when you just have all your time to yourself during the day to how much you can get done.
Yes.
Where your mind goes. Would you call yourself the pantser or the plotter?
Plotter, in that I like having a plot. I think writing is much easier if you have a very busy plot. But often things come along.
Yeah. While you're on the page, your characters, at least for me, they tend to talk to you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that world is so three-dimensional for me when I'm writing. I'm there. I'm at the dining table, or I'm in the kitchen, or wherever the character that's my voice is. Do you like to write in third person or first person?
My very first book, Monarch Beach, was first person, and I've done third person ever since.
Why? Why did you make that choice?
I think, and if you look, actually, almost every debut author writes in first person.
Me, I did too.
Yeah, that was my story. I mean, it was my story, and it was, it was like many people. I think I thought I'll never get this published. This is just me writing about, me.
Yeah. Yeah, Sassy Bells was so similar.
Yeah, but you can do so much. I mean, I love first person. I love reading first person, but personally, I feel like you can do so much more with third person. You can
Yeah.
explore so many more people.
Hmm. So are there other genres that you like to read?
I read a little suspense, not a lot. 'Cause I'm not good at being scared, but I love some of these, women's um, suspense novels that have come out. They are really, really good.
Oh, they're so good. I
Yeah.
never got into it. I always wanted to. That's the kind of TV I like to watch, or we've been watching a whole lot of British crime drama during the pandemic. And I love it so much. I love being surprised. I
Yeah.
think being scared is a little too far for me. I started reading a Ruth Ware. I got to page 30 and I'm already so freaked out. I'm not really sure I can do it anymore. The Turn of the Key was what I was reading. But Lisa Jewell doesn't tend to scare as much as surprise. And so I think that element of surprise is what I try to go for. But you can kind of do that, don't you think, in kind of any genre?
I mean, it's sort of, but that's not really what you're going for in different genres. I mean, there's got to definitely be some surprise elements, but that's not really the goal the way it is in
Hmm.
suspense.
What do you think the goal is in writing your historicals?
One is to teach people, that there really is so much to learn about different historical times, and
Hmm.
especially World War II and the Holocaust, because
Yeah.
I'm Jewish, and I never knew these things.
Hmm.
I never really knew what the suffering was like and what they experienced, and how deep it went.
Hmm.
And even though I was completely raised to, both my parents were Holocaust survivors, and my father's family died in concentration camp. But when
Mm.
you really, really start researching it, and so to teach and just to bring it to tell a story.
Hmm.
For me, one thing I love about writing, one of my favorite stories always is boy meets girl, fall in love, fate separates them. Do they or do they not end up together? And no matter when, no matter what historical period, no matter what's going on in the world, that's pretty much everybody's story.
That's right. That's right. So, what do you it like set for such a thing like Lana's War that's coming out? What was your inspiration for that?
Um, Again, really my mother's stories about the French Riviera. And then I just really got enamored by that location and by what was going on there during World War II. And sort of when I sort of discovered Lana, who I did make up, but she's sort of a mix of many different, because she's a white Russian,
Hmm.
was the survivors, the aristocracy, the Russian aristocracy, who survived the Bolshevik Revolution and then came to Paris, and then so her mother is that, and then she, has to survive World War II. So, I like a mix, and I think that's what sets my historical fiction apart a little bit.
Hmm.
I like a mix of the glamour and the
Yeah.
sophistication and the elegance, and there's no time that wasn't part of the time.
No, it's so evident in Light After the War, and even in your covers, you can tell it's the glamour of the time is kind of at the forefront. So, and that is so good for the reader because the reader is escaping. Why do we read novels? Why do we watch movies? We're escaping. And I love living in story. I mean, no matter whether it's screenplay or whatever it is, I just love stories so much. And they reflect so much on our own lives and really who we are. And in saying you write what you know, I still think within those women that you're writing, I mean, you knew your mother, and your mother is so prevalent through the novel, the Light After the War. So how did you figure out how to embody her stories and create them into a novel of fiction?
Well, her story, it just didn't need a lot of fiction. It was
Wow.
such an incredible story. I actually didn't change any of the names.
Can you
Uh,
hang on one second? Here goes this doorbell one more time. We'll just have to edit this part out. I don't know why these tree trimmers decided today was the day, and they're going to be very persistent. All right, go ahead and pick up where you left off.
Yeah, in The Light After the War, I didn't even change the names. My grandparents are in there, my mother's best friend, Edith, and their relationship, because she had just an amazing story.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there's a little bit of fiction, but not a lot.
Wow. And how do you decide how to, what to do about that? Is it okay to put those people's stories in a book like that?
Well, they're all dead.
Yeah. So, oh well.
I mean, that is kind of one of the rules, actually.
Sure.
If everybody's dead, there's you can.
Yeah.
But of course, people use people that are alive. And generally, I think all works of fiction say in the front, this is a work of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And,
But how do you decide how close to allow that to come? Let's say even in your Christmas books. Because writers do use people. You meet people, you find them kind of interesting. You want to use this little characteristic or that, or a body shape. Or I find myself doing that all the time. It was so done in all of my Sassy Belle novels. How do you decide too close is too close to the fire, and where to draw the line?
I think I'm like you in that I let the characters kind of tell the story and just sort of pick and choose. But yeah, one is always taking things from what one hears and sees and people one meets and snippets of this character in a movie and you can't help it. That's what life is.
And when you describe the way a character looks, how close is that? Because sometimes if characters do happen to still be alive, which is probably going to happen in my suspense novel, oh my gosh, is that so-and-so? Because you would just not believe how many people wanted to know who was in Sassy Bells. And,
Right.
Was that your mother? Was that my mother? Was that your aunt? And my people, fortunately and unfortunately are not dead. And so for me, I run into that as an author myself. I run into, because I do write what I know. That's where my passion comes from, is embodying, these strong women that I like to write about, whether it's a suspense novel or the Sassy Bells. Strong women are the things that are at the forefront of the novels I write. And I see that for you too.
I mean, that's a really great question. I try these days not to do too much physical description and let the character kind of speak for themselves. And so I think that then the reader can see themselves a bit more in the different characters.
That's a great idea. I remember when I was writing Sassy Bells, and Valerie Gray was my editor at Harlequin at the time, and she came back and she said, this character, we don't know what he looks like. We need to find a way to put him in there where we know what he looks like. And so I think for some people, maybe some editors, it's important to have that, and some editors not.
I think there's a balance.
Yeah.
There's a balance.
Have you ever had to change agents because you don't have the same goals or vision?
I did change my agent before I started writing the historical fiction, because my other agent, who was great, she wasn't really doing fiction. We've been together for, like 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sort of changed what she was doing, and I was changing what I was doing.
Oh.
I was lucky enough to find an agent who I absolutely adore and who does both.
Were you thinking for a long time about jumping the genres before you did it?
No, not really. I just, though, I mean, I did write about 70 pages of Light After the War a few years ago, but then I put it aside because I knew that it wasn't my genre.
Oh.
But then when I picked it up again, I just kind of leapt right into it.
Mm-hmm. So just the timing.
And then, of course, the good luck that it sold.
Right. Did it sell before? I mean, was your agent able to sell it before you were finished with it?
No, but I finished it quite quickly, and then she sold it very, very quickly.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank
Because that's a hard thing to do when you're known for things. So that brings me to the question, you're using different names for different genres. And how did that come about? Was that a suggestion from your agent?
So, well, it was actually my idea, but Anita Abriel is my maiden name. And so one, I thought it would be really nice to honor my mother that way,
Yeah.
by using that name. And I think it's almost essential if you're really going to switch genres to have a different name. It just makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't even thought about what I'm doing about that because I'm so determined, even though I keep hearing people say, write another Sassy Bells, write the next Sassy Bells. And I do have a wonderful idea, and I'm, 70 pages into the next funny story. Something in me just needs to get this bullying story out because bullying was just such a part of my life, my son's life. And I wanted to write a suspense novel kind of around how far people go to protect their child, from a bully. That's why I think the passion comes from that. So I think the passion for you may have been coming through your passion for your mother. Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And again, to write something just deeper, harder.
Yeah. Yeah. When you decided to pick this back up after the 70 pages, how long did it sit there, and how long before you decided you were going to pick it back up? What was the impetus that made you decide time to write that again?
I guess that's a really good question. I guess my kids growing up, and so sort of the lighter part of my life a little bit being done, all of a sudden I'm on my own again, and just more time to really decide what's important to me. And this was just very important to me. And also it was a pretty incredible story.
Okay.
It had an incredible story.
Yeah.
And
so when you picked it back up, how did you jump back into it? I'm embarrassed to say, probably 5 novels that are about 100 pages in.
oh yeah, I got stacks of those.
I find it very difficult to stop. I stopped 1 year ago. I'm so focused on this bullying suspense novel right now that everything's just kind of sitting there percolating. And if I decide, I want to go back and work on that today, like changing the channel or watching a new movie, it's really difficult, I think, to pick it back up because I don't remember what I said.
Yeah. Well, once I did, I committed to it. I had finished my last Christmas book that was under contract, and I knew I had the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so
did you reread it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I reread it. I added things to it. I added flashbacks.
Oh.
So yes, definitely. And then I just kind of took off from there.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about your process a little earlier. During the day, when you're writing early in the morning, do you stop and start, or do you write in one sitting?
I stop and start. I goof around a lot. I get right early in the morning because, but I get out first I actually clean the house, and because it kind of gets my mind going.
Yeah.
And I have my writing corner, and I sit there and I write. But I know what I want to accomplish, but I can't really. You can't accomplish all of it in one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
I can do about 800 words in one sitting, and then get up and do something else, and then come back to it.
Mm-hmm. So where did all of this come from? Were you always a writer, or was it something you aspired to do and had another career before this?
I was always a writer when I was young. I won a national contest in Australia when I was really young. And then when I went to college in America, I wanted to write. When I was actually a teenager, I wrote a young adult book and sent it off to a pretty famous editor at Harper and Row at the time. And I got a revision letter. But I had just come to America from Australia, and I decided to be a cheerleader at high school. And so I never did the revisions.
Wow.
Terrible. So then I went to college, and then I got married and actually ran my husband's business for 20 years. And so no, I put it all aside. until 10 years ago, which is when I started writing.
Wow. So prolific. 18 novels in 10 years.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, Anita. I
Thanks.
aspire to be like you. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate you joining me. I want to ask one quick question before we sign off here. Have you ever thought or wanted to, because I know you've had such a big life experiences in living all over the place and your mother's stories. Do you ever hope to write any nonfiction?
No, and I don't read nonfiction.
Yeah, that's the same here.
I'm just a absolute, I wouldn't know where to start. I'm just a fiction lover.
Yeah. Yeah.
And happy making stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah. Life's hard enough as it is. I think I feel the exact same way. This has been so much fun. So your book is coming out. It will be out by the time we drop this podcast. And you want to hold it up one more time?
Yes.
Since we're going to be showing this. It's called Lana's War, Anita Hughes. Beautiful stories, beautiful covers, beautiful locations, and deep, wonderful stories that make you just feel so good. And her other novel that is in this same genre, plus she has Anita Hughes. You can look at Anita Hughes for all of her fun Christmas novels. But this is one that I really enjoyed and includes so many real life stories from her own family, The Light After the War. Anita, thank you so much. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you in person again, give you a hug, enjoy some more coffee, and talk about the things we both love, our fiction.
Yeah.
So,
it's a pleasure to see you even this way.
Yeah, thank you. You too, Anita. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining the best book show ever. I'm Beth Albright, and we'll be back with more in just a bit.